What's up there guys, this is Cobb and welcome to a video looking at Warlocks in WoW Legion now. Of course, the only one I'm really interested in here is the Destruction spec, having played it in PvP for the better part of 8 years now. So we're mostly going to be focusing on Destro, but I will also brush over Demonology and Affliction, give some quick thoughts on those too. So you can see that we have opened the Warlock blog here, posted just the other day. You can find a link down below to the blog if you want to check out the changes for yourself, but we're basically going to be going over this. Also referring to some replies posted by Warcraft devs on Twitter. We want the clearest idea possible of what Destro might look like in Legion. And I just want to say straight away, nobody panic. There are a ton of people right now who've scanned over these changes, haven't taken much time to really think on them, and have already decided that Destruction is dead and buried. I sort of don't blame them because on the surface of things, most of these changes seem awful. In my opinion, however, having given it some thought, things aren't so bad, and dare I say, might actually end up being awesome. So let's get right into it. So first off, it reads right here, Destruction mechanics are in a solid place overall, and are already a good match thematically, so we are taking the opportunity in Legion to provide additional polish on existing gameplay. This opening sentence is pretty much a rather blatant lie. As it happens, it seems like Destruction Warlock gameplay is going to feel very different in Legion. If my theory about Char Remains is even just partially correct, but moving on for now. They're going to say while resource mechanic functionality isn't being drastically overhauled, we've changed burning embers back to soul shards. This does make a lot of sense to me. The difference between burning embers and soul shards could have just been a cosmetic difference in Legion. I mean, I'm happy that they're redesigning the way that our resources work as a Destruction Warlock, but with all of this noise about making specs feel unique and flavoursome again, with Hunters getting a melee spec and Discipline Priests being overhauled, you'd think that Destro not using Soul Shards would actually be something that they would want to keep. But nope, Soul Shards it is, which, I don't know, to me it just feels so very Affliction-y at this point. Whatever happened to the fantasy of our characters bursting into flames when we reach maximum embers? I know it's not a big deal, but it's a little bit strange. Anyway, so at this point all we really know is that we're getting Soul Shards back. What does this actually mean for the spec? We're going to get to that in just a bit after we've covered these spell changes. So first off we have Incinerate, and no, to my dishevelment, the animation is not being reverted back to the incarnation of Banassery that it once was. Incinerate is 40 yards range, a 2-second cast time, draws fire toward the enemy, dealing moderate fire damage. So the most important thing to note here is that Incinerate is just a blob of damage. It does not generate our secondary resource, which right now is Burning Embers, and in Legion will be Soul Shards. At first the idea of this scared the hell out of me. What are they doing to our spec, Then I realised that Soul Shards are very different to Embers. A Burning Ember can be built in small chunks at a time, whereas a Soul Shard is either empty or full, with nothing in between, and this is going to be really important to bear in mind going forward. Next on the list we have our trusty Immolate. 40 yard range, 1.5 second cast, burns the enemy with fire causing minor fire damage, and an additional strong fire damage over 15 seconds. Immolate critical strikes have a 30% chance to generate a Soul Shard. Really interesting. We're not a dot class, and yet we're going to have a dot mechanic helping us to build Soul Shards in Legion, and we still have no dispel protection for said dot. Also, 30% chance on an Immolate tick crit is pretty low, unless of course you're using Fire and Brimstone, but that doesn't really apply that much to PvP. I would have liked to have seen Immolate reduced to a 1-second cast time, or maybe even just made instant cast altogether, but it is what it is. So another seemingly lackluster change here, but bear with me guys. Again, most of these changes look bad, it is what they imply though that makes me optimistic for Legion. Moving on. Conflagrate is 40 yard range, instant cast, 8-second recharge time with 2 charges. Triggers an explosion of fire on the target, dealing moderate fire damage and generating a Soul Shard. It also causes backdraft, reducing the cast times of Incinerate and Chaos Bolt by 30% for 5 seconds. So Conflagrate is actually going to generate us a Soul Shard 100% guaranteed. I really like this. We could have done without the shorty backdraft nerf, reducing its duration from 8 to 5 seconds. Could make things awkward if we're trying to cast with melees on us, but it's hard to see, how bad it's going to be at this stage. In fact, in some ways it might actually be good. On the other side of the coin, in Legion, it's going to be a flat buff, and not a buff that will run out of charges after 3 Incinerates. So hey. Next up we've got Chaos Bolt, and Chaos Bolt is basically the exact same spell that it is right now in WoD. It still has that massive, cumbersome, clumsy cast time. It wasn't redesigned the way that I hoped it would be, and now it's going to cost us 2 Soul Shards to cast, up from 1 Ember. Again, on the surface of things, this seems horrible, and maybe it will be, but then again, you could interpret this as a clue as to the direction that the Destruction spec is heading. Right now, a lot of people are reading this and are getting angry because they are imagining this change taking effect in the context of Warlords of Draenor. What if, in Legion, we don't rely on Chaos Bolt so much? What if we have enough basic DPS without Chaos Bolt? What if the Char Remains playstyle won't even exist in Legion? And that's exactly the point I'm going to argue just after we look at Havoc here. So the cooldown was increased to 20 up from 15, and Havoc will now have only 1 charge, down from 3. Not gonna lie, this change sort of sucks ass. The one redeeming thing I can think of is that Havoc will probably still work with Chaos Bolt, and that's likely all we're going to be using it for in Legion unless we really need to double conflagrate a couple of melees while trying to kite or something. But anyway, just to hit pause for a second, I'm sure some of you guys are pissed at these changes, and they all just seem shite, but maybe some of you guys have figured out why I'm actually optimistic at this point. Now, you guys know how much I hate Char Remains, and I mean, in my eyes, this idiotic talent is the backbone of all of Destruction's problems. And I've been saying it since Warlords was in alpha testing. Char Remains makes for a brain-dead playstyle, turning a Destro lock into a Resto lock. You deal virtually 0 damage outside of Chaos Bolt, and we're talking about being out-healed by Spirit Bond and Drain Life here. And while you're not going for Chaos Bolts, you're just spamming Ember Taps until you can cast a Chaos Bolt. Well, in Legion, Char Remains is gone. Calling it right now, grab yourself a beer, play your favourite song, let it soak in for a while, unless you're underage, in which case you can't drink, so just grab some milk instead. Now, this hasn't been confirmed yet as far as I'm aware, but let's think about this. Char Remains increases our Ember generation by 200%, essentially tripling the amount of Embers that we get from Incinerate, and Conflag a non-crit Incinerate, therefore, will build you 0.3 of an Ember. But in Legion, we have Soul Shards, and it's impossible to build 30% of a Soul Shard. You either have a Soul Shard, or you don't, as we mentioned earlier. Therefore, Char Remains just doesn't work. Even if we apply it to Conflagrate, our main shard generator in Legion, Conflag is going to build us 1 Soul Shard. If we apply Char Remains to this, 1 Conflag would build us 3 Soul Shards in a single cast, and this just seems insane to me. Then we have this whole idea of Chaos Bolt costing 2 Soul Shards to cast. Again, some people are outraged by this, but to me, surely this is the way that Chaos Bolt should be. A big burst of damage that you work your way up to, and not something that you just cast willy-nilly, ultimately devaluing the awesome feeling that we should get when we get this spell off. So here's my theory, boys. Char Remains is either being removed completely or is being redesigned, either of which are fine by me. As a result, we won't be relying on Chaos Bolt so much. We'll actually have sustained DPS again through our basic spells like Incinerator and Conflag. We'll probably even see damage buffs to these basic spells to make up for the DPS loss of losing our Chaos Bolt spam. As well as Chaos Bolt being cut back, we're probably going to see our Ember Taps either changed, maybe renamed to Soul Tap and then nerfed a little bit or whatever, but maybe the spell might also just be flat out removed, and honestly, I'd be glad to see the back of the little shitbag. I'd much rather be melting faces and destroying people than pumping out any kind of self-heals. This also means that the level 15 talent Searing Flames, which reduces Ember Tap's cost by 50%, will also either be removed or redesigned, along with the glyph of Ember Tap 2. To me, this is all as scary as it is exciting. There's a chance that I'm wrong, but maybe in Legion we're actually going to feel like Destruction Warlocks again. Of course, we would appreciate them compensating for our loss of Ember Tap by actually scaling up our Healthstones in Legion. Like, seriously, having over 600,000 health and getting a 50k totally healed from a fucking Hellstone is pretty GG. But back to the point, I think Char Remains is gone and we're getting more sustained DPS instead. One thing I will say though, is that if Ember Tap is being removed, or just won't be as effective, meaning we can't tank very well in Legion, then oh man, if we don't get a decent amount of instant cast spells in our artifact talent tree and our PvP talent tree, there is, I would say, ample chance of us being thoroughly and sadistically abused by every single melee in the game, even Red Paladins, and Red Paladins can't kill anything. But yeah, it'll be pretty bad if the new talents don't give us some way to deal with melees if a Char Remains less Destro becomes a reality, and I think that it will, but enough speculation, now moving on to our Mastery. Mastery Chaotic Energies. Your destruction spells deal up to 40% additional damage randomly, and that is with typical gear. Very, very interesting. And even though some people hate this kind of RNG stuff, I like it a lot more than just having our Mastery buff our damage by a percentage. You know, that's so boring to me. This is definitely flavoursome, and I can see it causing, you know, a couple of Mongo one-shots here and there. As it stands though, I don't think Mastery will be our top stat anymore going into Legion. This is way too random. Even if you stack this Mastery up to a possible 80% damage increase. There's always going to be that chance that you lob out a big meaty Chaos Bolt and it only gets a 1% damage buff from our mastery due to the RNG. So I like it, but I think that our new star priority could end up being something like Haste, believe it or not, followed by Crit and then Mastery. Don't quote me on this though, way too early to be making any kind of solid predictions on this. Next up, the preview of a new Destruction specific talent. This one is called Channel Demon Fire. Channel spell, 12-second cooldown, launches 15 bolts of fell fire at immolated enemies within 40 yards over 3 seconds. Each bolt deals moderate fire damage. So it's pretty much a more powerful, evil version of arcane missiles. You know, when I first read this, I thought it was shit, to be honest. Why would you ever cast Demon Fire instead of just casting Incinerate or Chaos Bolt? But then we don't exactly know how much damage this new spell is going to do. Perhaps it'll be really good, we just don't know. I've also heard that, even though it doesn't say it right now on these notes, that this new Demon Fire spell might actually be a cast while moving ability, in which case that alone makes the spell awesome. Of course it might not be, but just saying if it is, oh man. And to wrap things up, got some snippets from Twitter here. There's been a lot of talk about Shadowburn being removed. Well, hold your horses, boys, it actually hasn't been removed, and is going to be a PvP talent instead, as you can see being confirmed in this here tweet. And in another tweet we have the very interesting news that in fact all Warlocks, regardless of spec, will be making use of Life Tap again. Not sure why I'm happy about this, maybe I'm just a nostalgic idiot, but there it is, Life Tap is coming back. And for all of you Affliction Warlocks out there, you heartless bastards, don't worry, you aren't losing Haunt. Just like Shadowburn, Haunt is also going to be a talent, so it's going to be there for you to pick up if you choose to do so. Moving swiftly on from that to cover Affliction really quick, I really like the changes. Not going to cover this one in detail, so again, if you want to check the changes to Affliction and Demonology yourself, there is a link in the video description that will take you right to where you want to go. But in a nutshell, Affliction is losing Malefic Grasp in place of Drain Life, as well as losing Haunt as a baseline ability. The Agony spell will be Affliction's main generator of soul shards, and these shards will be spent on casting Unstable Affliction, which in Legion sounds like it's going to deal a huge amount of dot damage over the course of only 8 seconds. Again, some people are whining about this, but I think that it's great. To me, Affliction is all about spreading damage and rotting enemy players, and from what I can gauge from the changes, Affliction is being taken back to a kind of TBC playstyle. When dots were actually really scary, and it wasn't all about micromanaging Soulburn Haunts or just spamming out 3 Haunts to single target best someone. So for me, most of these changes are good, but feel free to rage at me in the comments below if you're a furious Afflilock who wants to vent. Know that I'm here for you. And lastly, we have Demonology. Lots of excitement surrounding the spec lately, and the changes seem okay. Lots of new spells that focus on summoning and enraging demons. It's flavoursome, and I can't wait to see it in action. Maybe even play it myself, seeing as though, you know, I've never played Demo since Metamorphosis became a thing. But there is a problem that I'm seeing already with these Demonology notes, especially if you're a Demo lock looking to PvP. And this is that every single spell detailed in these notes, apart from Doom, has a pretty significant cast time ranging from 1.5 seconds to 2.5 seconds. And I guess I'm a little bit worried that Demonology might end up feeling like Destro, you know, feeling the pain of their Destro lock brothers, that sad boys feeling of having a rogue or warrior sticking to you, and basically not letting you cast ever. Feels bad, man, but just like with Destruction, we have to wait and see what happens with the PvP talents. For all we know, Fell Flame or Shadow Flame, or maybe even some new awesome ability is on its way. But anyways, goddamn, I think that this video has gone on long enough, so I want to thank all of you guys for watching. Leave any thoughts that you have on the blog notes down below, and I'll try and respond to as many of you guys as I can. If you like this video, do remember to leave a like. If you want to support the channel even more, consider stopping by the Patreon page to make a pledge. That shit literally changes my life. But for now, cheers again everyone, have an awesome day. I'm going to catch all of you guys just a tad bit later.